Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bridges. Buckner. Coleman. Cook. Quorum. Danielson. Danielson. Donovan. Finberg. Fields. Gardner. Janal. Gonzalez. Hanson. Heisey. Holbert.
Here.
Hawkins Lewis. Kirkmeyer. Colker. Lee. Liston. Lundeen. Moreno. Pedersen. Priola. Rankin. Rodriguez. Scott.
Here.
Simpson. Smallwood. Sonnenberg. Story. Winter. Woodward.
Here.
Zenzinger. Mr. President.
Here. The morning roll call is 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused. We have a quorum. Would the good senator from Centennial please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Members, please join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Members, I must admit, I'm running out of...
The senator is not recognized. Senator listed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I must admit, I'm running out of rhyme. I employ the president to give me some more time. So to heck with you all. With luck, I won't do this until after next fall, because thinking of new limericks is no crime. And with that, Mr. President, I move the reading of the Journal of Wednesday, April 21st, 2021 be dispensed with, and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The senator from Senate District 10 is fined $1. Senate Services.
April 22nd, correctly printed Senate Bills 248, SJR 17, correctly revised House Bill 1045, correctly re-revised House Bill 1008, 1046, 1057, 1060, 1091, 1129, 1148, correctly enrolled Senate Bill 67, 153, 179, and 221.
Committee reports.
April 21st, Committee on Education. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1112 be referred to the committee whole, a favorable recommendation. April 21st, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1220 be referred to the committee whole, a favorable recommendation. April 21st, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1108 be referred to the committee whole, a favorable recommendation. April 21st, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1188 be referred to the committee whole, a favorable recommendation. April 21st, Mr. President, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technologies had in consideration had a hearing in the following appointment recommends the appointment be placed in the consent calendar and confirmed member of the Board of Real Estate Appraisers effective July 1st, 2020 for terms expiring July 1st, 2023. Christy McFarland of Gunnison, Colorado to serve as the county assessor in office reappointed. April 21st, Mr. President, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had it under consideration and has had a hearing in the following appointments recommends appointments be placed in the consent calendar and confirmed member of the Securities Board for term expiring July 1st, 2023. Lawrence Reifert of Highlands Ranch, Colorado serve as a member of the public at large appointed. April 21st, Mr. President, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had in consideration Education has had hearing on the following appointments. Recommends appointment be placed in consent calendar and confirm member of the Underground Damage Prevention Safety Commission for term expiring January 1st, 2022. Patricia McKinley Clark of Arvada, Colorado, serves as representative of transportation occasioned by the resignation of Julie A. Michelin of Aurora, Colorado, appointed. April 21st, Mr. President, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had in consideration that hearing the following appointments and recommends appointments be placed in the consent calendar and confirm members of the Underground Damage Prevention Safety Commission effective January 1st, 2021 for term expiring January 1st, 2022. Danger Bijold of Arvada, Colorado, to serve as representative of engineers occasioned by the resignation of Catherine Marie Dutzman of Centennial, appointed effective January 1st, 2021 for terms expiring January 1st, 2024. James Patrick Fitzgerald of Greenwood Village, Colorado, serves as representative of Special Districts, reappointed. Lori Warner of Lakewood, Colorado, serves as representative of the Pipeline Companies, reappointed. Dale Kishbaugh of Longline, Colorado, serves as representative of Rural Electric Cooperatives, appointed. April 21st, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1207 be referred to committee hold a favorable recommendation.
Third reading of bills, final passage. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1045?
House Bill 1045 by Representatives Young and Valdez D. and Senators Fields concerning the Department of Agriculture's authority to control pests.
Senator Fields.
Good morning, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1045 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1045 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Heisey, Cook, Woodward, Lundin, Scott, the Minority Leader, Gardner, Simpson, Liston, Kirkmeyer, Quorum, Rankin, Smallwood. With a vote of 21 aye votes, 14 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1045 is passed. Co-sponsors. General order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself to the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. And Senator Rodriguez will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title of all the bills on the General Orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar?
House Bill 1224 by Representatives Byrd and Neville and Senators Winter concerning modifications and provisions governing foreclosure sales of real property.
Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for the adoption of all the bills on the consent calendar and their associated committee reports, which includes House Bill 1224 and the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee report.
Is there any discussion on any of the committee reports? The motion before the body is the adoption of all committee reports on the General Order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it and the committee reports are adopted. Is there any discussion on any of the bills on the consent calendar? The motion before the body is the adoption of all bills on the General Order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it and the bills are adopted. Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had a bill under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report has had in consideration the following attached bills being the second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1224 is amended, passed on second reading in order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. House Bill 1224 as amended passed on second reading, ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General order, second reading of bills. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general order, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, and Senator Rodriguez will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 61? Majority Leader Fedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 61 lay over until Monday, April 26th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 61 until what day? Monday, April 26th. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill will lay over till Monday, the 26th. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 21-1116? 116.
Senate Bill 116 by Senators Danielson and Representative Benavides and McClellan concerning the prohibition of American Indian mascots in Colorado.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 116 and the Education Committee report.
To the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We adopted some changes in the committee that were requests of our tribal leaders here in Colorado and up in Wyoming. And I urge an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, Senator Priola.
You have to adopt it before you amend it.
Okay, now that there is no discussion on the committee report, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill.
Senator Danielson, I have a question. I have this amendment. Can we do on it?
Oh, I have two amendments that I'll run.
Is this right now, or we're going to
So
take?
not that one.
This is a no?
That is a no. Thank you.
Which amendments are you running?
21 and 28.
Which amendments am I running first?
I'm going to run this one. This is one that was in the...
Okay, we're run it right now?
That's fine, go ahead.
Go ahead, let me have your amendments. I need the whole packet.
That's the packet.
This, wait a minute, this is the one we're doing right now, 22?
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L022?
Amendment L00222.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I move L022.
That is proper motion. Is there any discussion?
Members, this amendment is similar to Amendment 20 that was ran in the committee. There was another amendment adopted that allowed K-12 to enter into agreements with recognized tribes. This amendment does the same for higher ed institutions. I think it's important that we don't take away rights from our Native brothers to enter into agreements if they see fit as it relates to likenesses, names, colors, logos, so on and so forth. I ask for an aye vote on L022.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague. I urge a no vote on this amendment. It was not acceptable to the tribes themselves. So I'll let them speak for themselves on this amendment, and I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Seeing no more discussion, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L022. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L023?
Amendment L023.
Senator Priola.
Senate Bill 116.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this amendment L023 I will first move, so I move L023. It clarifies the definition of American Indian mascot And the clarification says, does not include any animal or item commonly found in other cultures. Then it says it, another part in the bill. After looking at the bill, I voted out of education. I thought that there needed to be some clarification with the definition, and I asked for an aye vote.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on the amendment. I've been working with the Native community across Colorado, the urban community, as well as the tribal communities, as well as the tribe that works with the schools here in Colorado, the Northern Arapaho up in Wyoming. The language that we've crafted in the bill is very, very intentional and took months to come to agreement around. So we cannot accept an amendment that redefines the mascot because we've been in constant communication about how to approach the issue from the perspective of the Native community. And so I am bringing one more amendment that will address this, and I urge a no vote on this amendment because, again, there was no conversation with the Native community on what they need the language to reflect. I appreciate the effort and I understand the goal, but I have to urge a no vote, again, out of respect to the community that we're trying to help with this bill.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We heard this bill in committee. It's been a subject to extensive conversations, not just this year, but over the years. This particular amendment seeks to, as the sponsor has made an effort to do, narrow and find the sweet spot, as we so frequently do. This amendment simply tries to define clearly that there are aspects that potentially could be, under some contexts, with someone's interpretation, be interpreted to be exactly an element that would fit under the prohibition created by this bill. And to take aspects of that nature out of just the common interaction that we have, the symbols, quite frankly, frequently you consider, a bear, an eagle. There are things that could have spiritual significance that at the same time it would be a mistake, I believe, to take them out of just the interaction, the symbology, the story of who we are as a nation, both the indigenous people and those of us who immigrated and came to the continent later. So I think this amendment is another step in the direction that the bill sponsor has moved, and I urge your support of it, because although the sponsor is unwilling, I think it continues in the tone, the tenor, the effort that has been made to get this bill to a better spot. So I urge your support of Amendment L023.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I need to stress that when I've been doing my work on this measure, every word was crafted in collaboration with the tribal leaders and the Native leaders from the urban communities across the state. So to come in at this point without running by this particular language would be a disservice and a disrespect to the process that we've been going through and the people that I've been working with. They have themselves crafted language in the bill that they agree to, and then there is an amendment coming that gives the tribal leaders and honestly the entire community a little bit more comfort around sovereignty. So this does not, your amendment, this amendment that we're considering does not reflect the wishes of the Native leaders that I've been working with. And like I said, they have had a constant input on the language that I have selected here because they have been fully a part of and in collaboration on the crafting of the bill, the language we've used, and every definition therein. So again, folks, I urge a no vote on the measure, or I'm sorry, on the amendment.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the progress and dialogue we are having. As introduced, the bill was opposed by the very individuals that are now being held up, the tribes as...
That's not accurate. I'm sorry, you can't say that the tribes were opposed in the record because they weren't.
My understanding is, to be clear in my language, that the bill was not supported. It was not advanced, would not have been supported in advancement That may be slightly nuanced, different than opposed, but without amendment, the tribes did not desire the advancement of the bill. I think that's a fair statement. And significant amendments were offered in order to achieve the support of the bill. So I would guess please disabuse me of my ignorance. And I apologize to my colleague in advance if I've misspoken. That was my clear understanding from my attention to the committee hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Sonnenberg. Oh, Senator Danielson, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have letters of support for the measure with amendment language that I'm bringing today from all three of the tribes. They were not opposed to the measure going into committee. The amendments that I offered in committee were at their request. So I don't want them to be mischaracterized or misquoted in any way. Just to be clear, and like I said today, they're in full support with the bill with the amendment that I'm bringing forward today.
Senator Lundin.
To be clear, my statement was intended to say the bill was not supported to advance without amendment. That's all I was saying. And this amendment is another idea being brought, not necessarily by the same people, but in order to advance the bill, to gather support for the bill, this amendment is being offered in that same tone as the prior amendments that were required to have people support the bill, to move it forward, specifically have the tribe support the bill. That is just, I want to be clear in my statement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I'm curious, I think I just heard that the sponsor was talking with the three tribes in Colorado. Well, it's my understanding there's only two recognized national tribes in Colorado, the Southern Ute and the Mountain Ute. There may be another one that's not recognized nationally, but according to the language of the bill, it has to be recognized nationally, so obviously that one would not be included. What about all the other tribes and the descendants that came here to testify from those other tribes that are no longer have a history or have any type of I don't know what you would call it, quite honestly. People still live in Colorado. For example, the town of Yuma is named after a tribe, Yuma, and there's still descendants there, but that isn't part of the conversation. I understand from talking with that gentleman that he wasn't consulted. So I'm curious as to who are the people that are having the conversation. Who are the 2 or 3 out of the 1,000 of tribes that used to be in Colorado that we're having the conversation with? And why is it that those 2 or 3 are the only ones that get to say yes or no? I want to be honored through this, through a mascot. For example, Yuma Indians. Those people, the Indian down there that often shows up, my son graduated from Yuma High School, often showed up to events in full headdress, proud of his heritage. And we're going to take that away because that's not a national recognized in Colorado. Help me understand, please.
Senator Danielson.
Well, first of all, what I said was that I had letters of support from the 2 Colorado tribes and the Northern Arapaho who are in Wyoming. So that's what I said. So the 2 Colorado tribes that are physically based in Colorado are the Ute Mountain Ute and the Southern Ute Indian tribe. The Northern Arapaho are based in Wyoming, but they're significant into this discussion because they are the ones who have the arrangement with Arapaho High School and Strasburg High School. So that is why those 3 tribes were specially consulted throughout the whole process on this. If you actually read the pre-amended version or the amendments from committee, you'll also see that we reference the 38 culturally tied to Colorado tribes. So for those of you who don't know, there are 574 federally recognized tribes across the United States. A huge percentage of all of those tribes are represented in the urban community of Native people in Colorado. Every single one of these organizations that provides services or provides educational support or is an organization in Colorado that's dedicated to supporting Native people are on board with this bill and have worked with me through it. So that's the representation of the hundreds of the federally recognized tribes who live in this area. As far as the 38 tribes that are culturally tied to Colorado, that list, if you don't know, is kept and maintained by History Colorado. And that's what we reference in the bill, so that any school that wants to develop a relationship with a federally recognized tribe that has bases and cultural ties to Colorado may do so. Now back to the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I would hope that we could support this amendment today. I would just say that in committee, we had members from the Rosebud Sioux tribe, which is out near Yuma, Mr. and Mrs. Robidoux, who showed up. They were not in support of the bill. In fact, they spoke about their 85-year history in Yuma, using the Indian as their mascot, and that they helped to develop that mascot. So again, I would hope that we could support this amendment and start trying to narrow this down.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So back to kind of pull the conversation back down to the amendment process and the amendment. Bill has been amended several times. It was amended to bring support from some of the tribes. And I'm inferring, I don't know whether I've heard clearly or not, but it sounds as if there's additional amendment that will be offered in order to bring support from the tribes. This particular amendment simply says an American Indian mascot does not include any animal or item commonly found in other cultures. American Indian mascot, it says in another section here, does not include any animal or item commonly found in other cultures. So there's two sections of the bill that it amends. It simply would remove the prohibition, and that's the challenge of this bill, is it's this broad statewide prohibition. It would prevent that prohibition from being applied to other items of society, culture, animals, things of that nature, eagles, bears, etc., that may have spiritual significance to certain individuals, including ourselves perhaps, but they would not be prohibited from use and not defined under this bill as something to be prohibited. So I just wanted to clarify, we had kind of a wide-ranging conversation there, what this amendment, Amendment 23, does, and I urge your support of making sure that we don't intrude into some of those other spaces.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I urge support for L023 because now we're getting into the interpretation in reference to what might be offensive. And we've already heard from the bill sponsor the collective work that she's done with stakeholders, and she says that this is not appropriate. And so I urge a no vote on L023.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L023. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. To the bill, Senator Danielson.
I don't want to hear the amendment just now, okay?
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L026?
Amendment L026 to Senate Bill 116. Amend printed bill, page 5, line 4, strike.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L026.
To the amendment.
Amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. L026 simply brings some fairness and equitability to this bill. The bill right now requires that on or after June 1st, 2022, that any public school in the state that is using the American Indian mascot, that if they continue using it, they would get fined. There's another $25,000 a month. There's another provision in the bill that says using the American Indian mascot as of October 1st, 2021 shall immediately cease use of such American Indian mascot. The good people from Yuma were here in our committee and spoke. They have used this mascot 85 years of a pride, respectful history is what they spoke to. If this amendment does not pass, they literally have about 5 months to try and replace their uniforms, to try to replace the mascot that they have located on their gym floor on a newly built school, and to basically have to go out and do a bunch of procurement. There's just no way that they can get uniforms bought, and this was brought up by the Yuma School District. This was brought up that there's no way they can get uniforms in place by October 1st of 2022, or 2021, I'm sorry. So this amendment just makes it consistent that at the same time that they would be prohibited to using the mascot and start getting fined is the same time that they have to cease and desist, and that would give them approximately a year to get new uniforms and other things in place and get the mascot replaced. So again, I thought it was a very reasonable request from the Yuma School District so that they could get this done. So we would change an October 1st date, 2021 to June 1st, 2022. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is pretty close to one that I was going to offer, so I would offer a substitute motion to adopt Amendment L021.
Yeah, and you could have talked to me too.
You wouldn't mind withdrawing your amendment?
It's the same amendment. It's the exact same language.
Yeah, so why do I have to withdraw my amendment? Why can't you just accept it and not put yours forward? It's the same exact amendment.
Different number?
Senatorial, there will be senatorial 5.
Yep. No, it's okay. I just got word from the drafter. It's the same, so we can vote on it.
The committee will come back to order. Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is exactly the same as the amendment I was going to offer, so I urge an aye vote on Amendment L026.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsor, the good senator from the northeast county corner of the state, Weld County, brought an amendment. The sponsor had a similar idea or the exact same idea, and I appreciate the fact that we're coming together. What this gets to isn't the philosophical question, which most of the discussion we've had and probably will continue to have as we get to the bill itself about. This is just about the practical nature of what this does to school districts. It's incredibly difficult, incredibly expensive for some of these smaller school districts to make such a wholesale change in their branding and their logo and the way that their uniforms and gym floors and so forth are currently characterized, painted, decorated. And this would give them a little bit more time. I'm grateful to the bill sponsor for making this a little bit more accessible or practical for some of the school districts. I urge your support of Amendment L026 offered by the senator from Weld County. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of L026. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see here.
There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L028?
Amendment L028 to Senate Bill 116. Amend the Education Committee report dated April 1st, 2021, page 2, strike lines 4 through
Senator
17.
Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this is a slight alteration to the language that addresses the ability for schools to enter into future agreements. This, again, is language that's been agreed to by the entire coalition that supports the measure. And I urge an aye vote on Amendment L028.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of L028. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues, so much for your time and attention today. We come before you today with Senate Bill 116, which prohibits the use of derogatory American Indian mascots. I'm sure you all know, though, this is not a new concept. Legislation in this building has been considered for more than 15 years on this exact issue. But really, it's been decades of struggle out in the community where Native people have come to these schools over and over and over and over again to describe the kind of harm it causes Native youth as well as non-Native youth, the kind of negative stereotypes that it perpetuates, and the kind of discrimination that it assists when these mascots are used by schools. In 2015, the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs commissioned a report on the use of mascots in Colorado. They made a series of recommendations at the end of their report, and they concluded that these mascots are not good for kids, they're not good for the community, they inflict damage on kids, they perpetuate negative stereotypes, and the use of these mascots should be discontinued. They visited schools that had these mascots, they held public hearings, they solicited feedback. This went on for a number of months. And like I said, at the end of the process, they made a very clear recommendation that if you are a school that has one of these mascots, you need to reconsider the usage of the mascot and discontinue it. And still, we have dozens of schools across the state that use mascots like Indians, Warriors, Reds, and Savages. It is long overdue that these changes were made and those kinds of mascots are discarded. Last year, the public across the country rose up and demanded social and racial justice. Even as part of this effort, I believe that doing everything we can as a state to interfere when the state is condoning derogatory and racist activity, we have an obligation to the public to do so. It became more of a national conversation when the Washington NFL football team abandoned their racist mascot, again after decades of discussion and conflict. Even Major League Baseball has chimed in. These teams are billion-dollar companies, and they have said, enough is enough. We're done with this. We're not going to participate in this kind of blatant racism. We're not going to perpetuate these images. We're not going to trivialize this culture by using their sacred symbols and pieces of their culture and their images themselves as mascots. Even the Jeep Corporation is considering a request from the Cherokee Nation to stop using their name for a car. So we pulled together the community to see if this was an issue we should still pursue, since it had failed several times in the Colorado legislature. And indeed, the community said that we should. It's a problem, it's persistent, it impacts their kids, and they are done with it. In committee, we heard hours and hours of passionate testimony. Passionate testimony from members of the Native community who have described decades of struggle to try and get these schools to abandon using these racist mascots. They talk about the harm that it has caused them. They talk about the harm that it has caused their children, the bullying that they endure, the bigotry, the slurs, and we also heard from the young people themselves. So young Native people having the courage to come into the committee and talk to us about their experience now, not 20 years ago, but right now, because we still allow for these schools to use these mascots. Can you imagine what it must feel like to a kid who goes to one of these schools where the opposing team is crying, "Scalp the Indians, massacre the Indians," because it still happens. where disrespectful kids are putting on war bonnets, painting their faces, doing mock war cries, calling out Native youth, teachers telling the Native kids, you should be the mascot instead of participate in the sports. It's harmful and it's unnecessary. As you also probably know, there are some schools that have entered into agreements with tribes in order to develop a relationship and a curriculum that includes the history of the people who had this place before they were eradicated, to make sure that students are learning about the culture and the impact that these people had. And in some schools, like Yuma, who did come to talk to the committee, there was one family who came and talked to the committee in support of the measure, and one administrator from Yuma who really just wanted to continue the use of this derogatory mascot. But there are schools who are working very closely with these tribes in order to enrich their students' lives and their education with the cultural information that they need. They even do exchanges where the students come from Wyoming and their students go up to Wyoming, so they're really learning and growing together. But the use of a mascot in a vacuum, where that is the only information that the students are receiving about Native people, is absolutely unacceptable. We wouldn't condone this kind of caricature or cartoon of any other race of people. So why are we still condoning it for Native people? People in the Native community are asking us to pass this bill. It is simple what they say. It is simple. We are not mascots. And I urge your support for the bill today to finally tie up this loose end that has been the goal of the Native community for decades on end now. And we have the opportunity to finish this up right now, where the tribes and the community, urban and reservation, are all in unison asking us to pass this bill. Thank you.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I have a question for the sponsor on the amendment that was adopted, L028, or the sponsor. Was this amendment to clarify the K-12 language that was adopted in committee, or is this amendment apply to higher education as well?
Do you see where it amends the bill? If you can see where it amends the bill, then that's what it does. I mean, do you need me to read?
I don't have the bill in front of me. Do you have the bill in front of me?
Yeah.
But it's to the committee report. Can you just say?
It amends the portion that we adopted in committee.
So it's the K-12 portion.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Senator Priola.
Mr. Chair, so the sponsor explained to me on the side and confirmed what I suspected. It amended the K-12 portion, the exemption that was put on in Education Committee.
Senator Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Been looking forward to this conversation. I am the representative of Southwest Colorado. I am the senator that has both the Ute Mountain and the Southern Ute tribe. And I've got to tell you, from that tribe, I have received 0 phone calls, 0 texts, and 0 emails. 0. Looking at the study, I love studies because you choose to go where you want the answers. 4 schools were talked to in this study. 4 out of dozens and dozens and dozens. So if you want the answer that you so desire, limit the input. I am a proud graduate of Montrose High School. Montrose High School Indians. And that is truly an honored position in our community. And you know, you think about it, we all want local control till we don't want local control. Montrose is the home of the Ute Indian Museum. It is a multi-million-dollar building ran by the Colorado Historical Society. It is truly to honor the Ute Nation, and that it does. Many, many years ago, the city of Montrose took up a donations to exhume the body of Chipeta, wife of Chief Uray, to bring back for burial on the ancestral farm of Uray and Chipeta, the location of the Ute Indian Museum. I don't think that anyone could honor anyone more than we do in that community. We're all in a state of cancel culture. We presume, with the perception that we don't like it, that everybody doesn't like it. That is not the case. But we're saying we're doing this. And you know what? It's okay if you pay $25,000 a month. There's names for people who do things for money. And frankly, money will come forward in some of these smaller communities. The GoFundMe page is going to come up to pay for that. But also, I'm going to remind you that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And in these small communities, high school athletics, school is right up there with religion. It's far more important than politics. So you may get what you are asking here for today. I'm a strong advocate of local control, but at the same time, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be a chair in a committee next time.
And, oh, there'll be a
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask for a no vote on this bill for this reason. The bill's legislative declaration, which was spoken to today, distorts the conclusions reached by the governor, and that was Governor Hickenlooper's commission to study American Indian representation in public schools. Here's what was in the legislative declaration, pretty close to what was stated today. After visiting each of these communities, that would be Strasburg, Loveland, Eaton, and Lamar, the Commission's recommendation was to completely eliminate American Indian imagery and nomenclature in schools in Colorado. Here's an excerpt out of the Commission's report from 2016 in which it recommended that communities reevaluate the use of mascots, and it left open the possibility of schools continuing to use American Indian mascots. It states, furthermore, schools and communities that choose to retain American Indian representations should form a partnership with individual federally recognized American Indian tribes to promote transitioning to respectful relations. The Commission respects the inherent sovereignty of American Indian nations, including tribes' authority to enter into relationships with public schools in both native and non-native student settings regarding the use of the American Indian mascots, representations, and practices. Through these relationships, respectful use of mascots and depictions can be developed and can foster the use of authentic educational experiences with regard to the American Indian history and traditions and culture. They didn't say that it was to completely eliminate American Indian imagery. It's not what the Commission said. I would just point out to you that for Arapahoe School District, the mascot, the depiction was created by a member of the North Arapahoe tribe. I would point out for you, one of the schools that was visited, Eaton, removed the, as was stated in the, again, the legislative declaration, removed the large nose caricature. They don't have that as their mascot. And in fact, back in November, the board voted to take the feather off of the red E. So, and for Yuma, yes, they came to our committee and they spoke and they talked about 85 years of a prideful, respectful history with the tribe in their area. And Mr. Rubidoux, who is a Rosebud Sioux from the Rosebud Sioux tribe, is the one who helped develop their mascot. So again, I think when we're putting things forward, we should pull forth the, all of the comments that came out of the commission. And again, the commission didn't say eliminate, it said reevaluate and come up with a respectful relationship. I would ask for a no vote.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm asking for a yes vote. Because enough is enough. When I think about Native Americans, this is very personal for them. And the way they're being displayed doesn't reclaim their history and their legacy and their stories as being Native Americans who are in this country way before we were. These mascots are dehumanizing, and they need to be banned. The next generation of Native youth and the current generation of youth are bombarded with these negative images without the ability for them to defend themselves. Enough is enough. So I want to thank the senator from Wheat Ridge for promoting this legislation to ban these public negative symbols of Native Americans. Where do you think Native American children learn how to think about themselves? It's definitely not in our history books. It's definitely not in the images that are being displayed or portrayed. They're portrayed in less than positive ways. The most relevant place that a young person in their neighborhood gets an opportunity to understand who they are is through our school system. It may be through mainstream sports. And then you have these Indian mascots imposed as Native American people against their will. Enough is enough. We've seen that they have taken off images, marketing images of African Americans. They've removed Aunt Jemima from the syrup. They've removed Uncle Ben from the rice. Because of the image that portrays. It's very negative, it's very harmful, it's very hurtful. It's time to give it up. It's time to give it up. We need to move beyond these mascots that try to identify what American Indians look like or what they should represent. This is not the right approach in 2021 to continue to have these mascots. They need to be banned. And so, for this generation to continue to say that those mascots are relevant, it's just hard for me to get there. Because our children are watching, and they want us to take responsibility to address this matter. So members, I urge you, along with the Senate sponsor, to vote yes on Senate Bill 116 because enough is enough. We gotta move beyond these kinds of images as it displays our Native American indigenous people. Vote yes on Senate Bill 116.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand in support of Senate Bill 116. Stereotypes are largely connected to the persistent racism and discrimination faced by many, many minority groups. We cannot honor a race or culture and then make fun of that. We can't honor and then make fun of it. I wish you had heard the testimony in committee. These young students from Cherry Creek High School, my Senate district that I represent, talking about experiences they faced because they are Native American Indians. Getting on the school bus and people doing war whoops, making fun of them. These kids poured their hearts out with examples of what they faced regularly because they are American Indian. American Indian culture and heritage is made and diminished because of these offensive mascots. I grew up in a town of 5,000 people, a very small town in southern Indiana. As a young black girl, I faced so many similar situations. And in committee, I talked about this little town that I grew up in. And I know many of you know what a lawn jockey is. Okay, if you don't know what a lawn jockey is, I'm going to tell you what it is because I see some people shaking their head. They don't know what a lawn jockey is. When I was growing up in this little town, it was really popular to have this little statue about this tall, painted jet black with white teeth in your yard. My mother was a cleaning lady, and she had to go to these houses with these little lawn jockeys in the yard. How embarrassing for me and my mother and any other person of color to have to put up with a lawn jockey in a yard. To this day, when I go back home, and I love to go back home, that's where my roots are, I still see these little lawn jockeys in several yards. It's still there. Well, we can't have a law about removing the lawn jockeys, but we can have a law about not making fun of American Indians by using those mascots. Now, I'm in favor of the witnesses who came to talk about how it's so important to their heritage to still have something like a headdress in the school or some other symbols, but to have the mascots exemplify something that is so distasteful to those people, that is unacceptable. I have some more history to tell you. My great-grandmother, full-blooded Indian, Blackfoot tribe. I know a lot about the heritage and the history of Native Americans because my great-grandmother was Native American. She was proud of her heritage. Her hair was so long, she could sit on her hair. She was absolutely beautiful. But over the years, she told me how she was discriminated against because she was American Indian. So my heart is full today, and I am just giving you the truth about what it feels like to be discriminated against because of mascots and images. Yes, I was made fun of because of Aunt Jemima. Kids used to tell me, "Oh, is that what your mother looks like? Her head tied up, grinning?" Uncle Ben, same thing. You all, it's time to move past this. We cannot eliminate systemic racism if we have these feelings and these ideas in our heads. How can those young kids from Cherry Creek High School who pleaded with us to do something, how are they going to get better? How are they going to feel proud as American Indians if they are still made fun of? There are other ways to honor people and cultures instead of making fun of them. We didn't have to remove those little lawn jockeys because there will never be a law about that. But we can do something to help these thousands and thousands of people across this country and in our state who want to do something for their heritage that makes them feel good about being Native American Indians, but not to be made fun of. So I stand in strong support of Senate Bill 161.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I rise in support of this bill. When my parents got married and when my mom was pregnant with me, my dad got a job managing the 5 different ranches for the San Carlos Apache tribe. And so I was actually born on the reservation in Arizona. Grew up on the San Carlos Apache reservation and lived in Arizona until I was 10. When I was 8, my parents bought a house in the first town just off of the res. And so I remember really clearly going to 3rd grade and starting in a new school. I remember how fascinating it was, even as a little kid, as a 3rd grader, as a non-native kid, as one of me and my little brother, the DeSelliers, when you can count on one hand the non-native kids who lived and who went to Rice Elementary in San Carlos, Arizona, to go from that context to then to be one of the only kids who had grown up on the reservation to then go to Copper Rim Elementary in Globe, Arizona. The kids taunted me. The kids asked all sorts of questions, even though we were just a few miles away. Kids had no idea, no context about the culture and traditions of the San Carlos Apache except for what they'd seen on TV, except those harmful stereotypes. The tomahawk chop from the Atlanta Braves, the Cleveland Redskins. The fact that there was so much proximity and yet so little understanding taught me as a little third grader. Before I learned the big words, before I learned the vocabulary around harmful stereotypes, taught me that kids have a million different ways to learn about what pride looks like versus what teasing and bullying can look like. And so we have the opportunity through this bill to say no more, to change the way that Native students and also non-Native students can learn from one another, and can learn about what pride looks like, can learn about what tradition looks like, can learn about what honor and respect look like. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just briefly want to rise in support of this bill, and building off of the comments from the good senator from Denver that just mentioned. One of the hardest things as a mom is actually teaching your children how to be good human beings that recognize full human beings and are kind and don't bully and don't characterize. And when I explain to my children why we don't dress up as Indigenous folks for Halloween or Dia de los Muertos for Halloween, because that's a culture and it's not a character, and explain how we honor people and get to know people and respect culture. And then there's this entire other side that they see in sports teams doing the exact same thing that I tell them is inappropriate. And so as a community, we need to come together and reinforce those lessons of how to respect and honor culture. And it becomes, if it's confusing for my white children on what that means, I can't imagine how confusing and detrimental that is for our Indigenous children in these schools when they are trying to stay connected to their culture. At the same time, they show up at a Friday night football game in characterizations and costumes and things that don't honor culture. This is an important way to move forward to make sure that we are honoring culture and moving forward, and it's time to do this.
Senator Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've never considered the word Indian as racist or offensive. I would be surprised if not most of us in this room have at least a small amount of Native American blood. My great-grandmother was half Cherokee. We were never ashamed of that. It was a moment of pride. And to say that this is offensive to Native Americans is absolutely incorrect. Let me read you a little story out of the Washington Post. I'm well aware of this community. The fans poured into the bleachers on Friday night, erupting in "Let's Go Redskins," chants that echoed across the new artificial turf, glowing green against the vast dun-colored landscape. Inside the Red Mesa High School locker room, Ted Nugent's Stranglehold blared on the stereo as players hurried and strapped on their helmets and gathered for a pregame prayer and prep talk. "This is your time, right?" the team's assistant coach demanded. "Yes, sir," the players shouted. "Redskins on 3. Redskins, 1, 2, 3, Redskins." That scene is in the tiny, remote high school, which boistered as one of the remarkable, nearly everyone on the field and the bleachers belongs to the Navajo Nation. But somehow, it is somehow our duty as non-Indians to say that the word Indian is racist and offensive. I ran cattle for many, many years in Gunnison County. One of the largest ranches in Gunnison County belongs to the Ute Mountain Tribe. And the joke was when we get together and start gathering cattle is, okay, let's go play cowboys and Indians. And I'm going to tell you, they're cowboys. They're good cowboys. They might be registered in the tribe, but they're good people, they're proud people, and they're cowboys. And it's when it's time to cowboy up, and you need a favor, you need a friend, you need something done, those are the one you call. And to tell me that I call my friends Indians, that makes me a racist, is offensive to me. I myself have Native American blood. I am proud of that. And I am proud of how my community has honored the Ute tribe. I'm not sure there's another city in the nation that has been more respectful and honor the Ute heritage any more than Montrose, Colorado. And if you don't believe me, take a little drive down the road. 5.5, 6 hours, you're there. And you will be amazed of how that community honors the Ute tribe with the museum located on the ancestral farm of Chief Ouray, whose photograph you will see in this building. A proud man, a smart man, a dedicated man to his people. I truly believe that this is a local decision. I do not support using it as racist or offensive. But to tell me, because I have a jacket that was given to me by the football coach, his personal jacket, that has the insignia of the chief that represents the Montrose Indians, is racist and derogatory toward me, is offensive.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I thank the bill sponsor for bringing the bill and continuing to drive forward this conversation. This is, right here, the crucible in many ways. A crucible is a place where you refine further and further and distill further and further towards the purity that you seek. And that's essentially what we're doing. I will make an effort to make a very narrow argument. Heard the bill in committee, I've heard it previously. I do not have the liberties that the previous speaker, the good senator from Montrose, has based on his lineage, his blood heritage, to speak with the freedom that he has to speak. So I will speak in making narrow argument. We begin in complete agreement. The agreement isn't about a prohibition. The agreement is about our universal revulsion of things that are derogatory towards another human being. We're completely unified in that. But the bill doesn't just speak to that, and that is where the challenge arises, and that is where my argument arises, though it be narrow. The bill prohibits universally, takes away an element of local control that is an honored part of our tradition with regard to schools and so forth, and I would argue that it essentially begins to take away individuality in a way that none of us would be comfortable with if we actually thought it all the way to the ground. To characterize any group as monolithic, monochromatic, only characterized a certain way is absolutely inappropriate. That's how stereotypes begin. And then when those stereotypes are twisted and made even more derogatory, we should all be repelled by and object to those. We should listen to all sides of a conversation, including the people who are offended. And that's what the commission, that this bill essentially washes away. This bill makes the work of that commission essentially disappear. It said, through these relationships, the relationships of individuals in the community, respectful use of mascots and depictions that can be developed can foster and use the authentic educational experiences with regard to American Indian history, traditions, and culture. The bill takes that away. It simply says no, prohibition is the only answer. In committee, we heard a significant amount of testimony, passionate testimony, personal testimony, testimony I listened to so very, very carefully because I could not possibly understand or know because that's not been my experience. And I will tell you that testimony was dignified to a person. But it was not universal. It was not monochromatic. It was not an acclamation of the bill. And the bill, as we discussed previously, has morphed and moved and changed, as legislation consistently does. But we heard a voice, Mr. Robideau, a Rosebud Sioux individual from Yuma. He spoke on behalf of himself, his two sons. One of his sons then testified remotely a little bit later. And he brought a different perspective. He said, this prohibition, not only is it an onerous burden on my school district, but in fact, it contradicts something I have experienced through the course of my life. And that is the honoring of my heritage by virtue of the name of the town in which I live, by virtue of the name of the school in which I live, by virtue of the mascot of my school, and you're taking that away from me. You know, as I listened to that, at the end of that hearing, I thought of that emotional moment that sometimes you experience, or a director of a movie tries to bring you to, where you have that individual who in the back of the room starts clapping, and then the next thing you know, 2 people, 6 people, 50 people are applauding. Mr. Robideau stood up and said, he said with an authority, I cannot speak. I'm a Rosebud Sioux, and I don't like this. I don't want it to be prohibited. And so on the strength of his argument, and the fact that I think the bill is overbroad in its effort, but I get why. I mean, we're trying to do away with something we all agree is wrong. This derogatory diminution, demeaning of another human being, none of us like that. But my argument is this bill isn't going to get us there. The commission that was in place was getting us there. This bill essentially wipes that commission away. I urge your objection to, or your no vote on Senate Bill 116, even though I appreciate and respect the desire to drive this conversation forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to talk about this from a different angle. Where do we stop? What's next? What are the unintended consequences? Are we going to eliminate Vikings as a mascot? Rough Riders? Lancers? Cowboys? Are we going to eliminate Cowboys next? How about farmers? Wheat Ridge Farmers. If you've seen their logo, it's not very flattering to a farmer. But the fact of the matter is, it's an honor and a tribute to farmers. And they pay that tribute. Beet diggers. You know, I can find probably something wrong with every single one of those. And society can find something wrong with every single one of those. And if you want to play the victim with our current administration, we've seen how that's worked with agriculture, farmers, cowboys, beet diggers. But here's the unintended consequences. In our cancel culture that we seem to be going down, we are eliminating any opportunity to continue to have those discussions. When you eliminate an Indian mascot, you eliminate the opportunity or diminish the opportunity to learn about that culture and that heritage. As we remove mascots, as we remove other things in our cancel culture society, such as statues around the Capitol, those type of things, we eliminate the discussion and the history associated with those tributes. I'm asking us not to do that. I'm asking you to vote no on this bill so that that local control, those local school boards can handle these mascots and situations as they see fit and not have the big hand of government cancel their culture and eliminate those opportunities to study history, to remember history, and to keep history alive. Asking for a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did not have the benefit of attending the hearings in the committee on this bill, but I did attend some hearings a few years ago on a bill sponsored by Representative Salazar and Melton on a very similar issue. And the testimony or the arguments that I heard in today reminded me of that hearing, at the end of which a young lady and her mother and her sister came to the witness table in full Indian regalia and made an impassioned plea in support of the Melton-Salazar bill. And the one young lady, who couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, I'll never forget the 5 words she used, which is all she said at the hearing, and she was from Lamar. She looked at the representatives and said, "I am not a savage." I stand in support of this bill.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak against the bill. When I first looked at the bill, as I've been known to do, I turned to our constitutions, and I think we are all familiar with the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, protecting speech and religion, the freedom of assembly, to petition government, to seek redress of grievances from executive, legislative, or judicial branches of government. But then beyond that, I went to our state constitution. Article 2, the Bill of Rights in the Colorado Constitution, Section 10, says, "No law shall be passed impairing the freedom of speech. Every person shall be free to speak, write, or publish whatever he will on any subject, being responsible for all abuse of that liberty, and in all suits and prosecutions for libel, the truth thereof may be given in evidence, and the jury, under the direction of the court, shall determine the law and the fact." I read that, and in my layperson, non-attorney understanding of what those words mean, felt that I couldn't support this bill. But I went to the Office of Legislative Legal Services and asked the attorneys who advise us for their opinion. And I learned about something called government speech. And I was told that, yes, in that attorney's opinion, this bill would be constitutional because it would define government speech. My understanding is that that attorney at least felt that this bill, if it were to become law, would be constitutional because it's one jurisdiction of government telling other jurisdictions of government what they're allowed to say or not say. The second objection I had to this bill when I first read it was that it dealt with this idea, this concept of free speech in a way that I really hadn't considered. I'd considered the freedom of speech to be free of barriers, unencumbered to speak what you would, to write what you would. But I realized with this bill that free speech also can apply to the monetary cost of certain speech. And that's the second reason that I object to this bill, is that I suppose some could say that it prohibits use of certain words. But what it really does is apply a cost, a fine, a value to certain words. And my encouragement to people who have advocated to me in the past to bring such a bill, to vote for such a bill, my encouragement has been, go talk to the school boards. Go talk to people in those communities, because if they agree, if they see the offense as our state constitution points to, if there's libel, if there's offense there, they would have the opportunity to see that and then decide for themselves to not use that speech. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate this time, and members, I hope that my speech is always measured, that I take that into consideration as I address each of you. I would ask for a no vote because I just see this as being against both our federal and state constitutions, and certainly treading on the idea, the concept of speech being free. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no further, Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members, for your time today. I think there's a few things that we need to remember as we consider this vote today, especially just days after what's been happening in Minneapolis and what's been happening to our country and our commitment to stand up for racial and social justice. We have to be careful when we talk about who this is not offensive to, in our opinion. Now, I'm the fourth generation of my family to grow up on our farm in northern Colorado in Weld County, just north of Eaton, by the way, but I am not a Native person. So when they say over and over and over and over again for decades now that this use of these mascots is racist and offensive, it is long overdue for us to listen to them and do what they ask. It was challenged earlier by one of my colleagues that this bill didn't have the support of the Native community. So I also want to remind you who stands with me, who I did this work on behalf of from the beginning. The Denver Indian Health and Family Services, Denver Indian Education Program, Denver Indian Family Resource Center, Jefferson Indian Education Program, Adams County Indian Education Program, Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs, who's been working alongside me to help me with this language from the moment we started, American Indian Movement of Colorado, Lamar Proud, American Indian Alaska Native Program, Keystone Policy Center, Cheyenne and Arapaho, the Northern Arapaho Tribe, the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, and the Ute Mountain Ute are all in formal support. So it is not appropriate for us to come to this well and talk about what the tribes want. It is appropriate for us to solicit their feedback, take the time to pick up the phone and call them, and understand what they want for their people, and then come here and talk about that at the well. When we talk about government contracts and the ability for them to do what they want, this bill also takes into consideration something that you might not every day, but that those tribes that we discussed earlier absolutely do. And that is the ability of a sovereign nation to make decisions on their own with any other governmental body. So if I do need to remind some of you, those tribes that we discussed are sovereign nations. They need to maintain the ability to make and carry out the decisions that they feel best benefit the people who they represent. They are sovereign nations, and we have to respect that. This gives them the ability to form and foster relationships with schools across Colorado as they see fit, as the tribes see fit. And if a mascot is selected down the road, the tribes must approve it, in consultation and with approval of their governing body. Because like I mentioned before, these are sovereign nations with their own government, who I was privileged enough and honored enough to work with in order to craft this bill. It has been my honor from day one to even start out on this policy change. We must also be careful to talk about how we honor Native people. This is also not a new argument here. And I can tell you the level of frustration from the community is off the charts when they hear white people talking about how to honor Native people, and that doing that includes using a mascot, a token, a good luck charm. There are infinite ways, an infinite number of ways to honor Native people that have nothing to do with trivializing their culture down to a caricature or a cartoon in order to bolster their good luck and their success on the court or the field with a mascot. We talked about honoring them specifically. You know, one of the schools that was brought up in conversation earlier is the Yuma Indians. This is their mascot. This is the mascot that they claim doesn't cause any harm. For those of you who can't see it, it is a cartoon face of a Native man with a large nose, hair and pigtails and earrings, and feathers in his hair. Do you think that that accurately represents the middle school-aged girls who came to plead with the committee to pass this bill? Do you think that it represents our friends and neighbors that we interact with every day? Do you think it encompasses their culture and their religion in an appropriate fashion? It absolutely does not. And that is not my opinion. I share that opinion, but that is the opinion of the Native community across Colorado. And we have had decades to make these changes. For example, the schools in Jefferson County went through this overhaul in the 90s, and they got rid of these offensive mascots because it was already well known back then that that was the right thing to do. And as for the argument that this is as on the same level as using Vikings or beet diggers or farmers or cowboys, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Vikings are no longer a reality on planet Earth, okay? These are not people that live among us. These are not our friends and neighbors, okay? This is from a long time before any of us were on the planet. If someone had risen up and said, boy, the use of the Vikings is really offensive to me, I would listen to that and see what they had to say. And as for the others, those are jobs. Those are jobs. They are not people. It is not a culture, okay? There is a difference. I thank you all who have come here today to say that you support the measure, and for whatever reason that is. These images do trivialize an entire culture of people that I am very proud to be, in the same state as. And throughout this process, I've gotten to know the community a lot better. And when I say it was my privilege to be with them from the beginning, it really was. It still is. Each day that I get to interact with them, every single one of them, I become a better person for it. So when they are saying, please, please, pass this bill, stop the use of this derogatory practice, we are not mascots. They have said over and over again, we are not your mascot. Please listen to them. Please understand that this is important. It will make a difference. It's a step that we can take together, and it will help this community end a practice that perpetuates negative stereotypes, is harmful to Native and non-Native youth, and is completely unnecessary. If our communities are truly invested in the idea of building a culture, a cultural awareness, building a curriculum, building any kind of an understanding or a positive relationship with any of the tribes that I described, they are free and clear to do that at any time, for any reason. And the state encourages that. I encourage that. But it doesn't have to include the use of a derogatory mascot. I urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 116. Thank you so much.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 116. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1193?
House Bill 1193 by Representatives Gray and Senator Priola concerning consumer protection for acts related to a supplemental restraint system.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1193. There is no committee report.
For the bill.
Members, this bill was heard in BLT a few days ago. There's no fiscal note. There was some testimony in support of it. It's for public safety. Ask for an aye vote.
It's seeing no further discussion. The motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1193. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the committee is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
Senate will come to order. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report as had in consideration the following task bills being the second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 116 as amended, passed on second reading, order engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1193 passed on second reading, order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 61 laid over until 4/26 and retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the committee of the whole report. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 001 to the committee of the whole?
001 to committee of the whole. Senator Priola moves.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move 001 to the Committee of the Whole report. This refers to the clarification to the American Indian mascot definition to exclude animals or items commonly found in other cultures. I believe this is a friendly amendment. It's meant to clarify the purpose of the bill so there are no misunderstandings or undue lawsuits in the future. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks to my colleague. Again, out of respect to the community that has worked for months to carefully craft the wording in the legislation, I urge a no vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Having no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Amendment 001 to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? Senators Gonzalez, Hawkes Lewis, Coleman, Buckner, Lee, Story, Zenzinger, Hanson. Senator Buckner, I have you recorded. Rodriguez, Moreno, Winter, Pedersen, Janal, Colker, Bridges, Fields, Donovan, the Majority Leader, Danielson. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 20 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Amendment 001 is lost. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 002?
Amendment 00.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Amendment 002. This
To the amendment, Senator.
This amendment to the Committee of the Whole report is very important to me. This amendment will do what an amendment that was adopted in the Education Committee allowed for agreements between federally recognized tribes and school districts. This allows it for higher ed institutions. My understanding is there are currently no higher ed institutions that have mascots that would fall under this, so I'm still struggling to understand why this would not be allowed. I feel that it is taking rights away from our Native American brothers and sisters, in that in the future, should a university want to enter into an agreement with them and a tribe would want to enter into an agreement, state law would prohibit it. I also feel this would allow for a challenge under our First Amendment rights, possibly all the way to the United States Supreme Court. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And like I said in committee and like I said on second reading debate, this amendment was put forward and there was opposition from the Ute Mountain Ute and the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. And so as a result, the coalition decided not to put forward the amendment. Out of respect for the tribes and their position, I urge a no vote.
Having no further discussion, the question before the body is the adoption of Amendment 002 to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? Senators Coleman, Hanson, Hawkes Lewis, Zenzinger, Moreno, Story, Colker, Fields, Rodriguez, Gonzalez, Buckner, Lee, Winter, Pedersen, Janal, Senator Fields, I have you recorded as a no. Donovan, Bridges, the Majority Leader, Danielson. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 20 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment 002 is lost. The question before the body is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 116 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1193 passed on second reading, ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 061 laid over until 4/26/21 and retaining its place on the calendar. Consideration of House amendments. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 077?
Senate Bill 77 by Senators Gonzalez, Representatives Benavides, and Kipp concerning the elimination of verification of an individual's lawful presence in the United States as a requirement for individual credentialing.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate reject the House amendments to Senate Bill 77 and that a conference committee be appointed.
Is there any discussion? The motion is that the Senate not concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 077 and that a conference committee be appointed. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, that motion is adopted. The following senators are appointed as members of the First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 077. Senators Gonzalez, Chair, Rodriguez, and Priola. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 133?
Senate Bill 133 by Senators Quorum and Representative Catlin and Will concerning alcoholic beverages purchase for the purchase of a special event held at a club licensed to sell alcoholic beverages by the drink to club members for consumption on the club premises.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 133.
Will the good senator from Montrose tell us why we should concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 133?
Thank you, Mr. President. Even though a bill leaves this chamber to the other house, my work is not done. Worked very closely with the House on an amendment. There was a little confusion about the word donation. So what this amendment does is under Title 44-5109, alcohol beverage obtained for a special event authority by a club license to commingle with inventory. If a person licensed under Section 44-3418 purchases alcohol beverages from a wholesaler for purpose of a special event held on the licensee's premises, the licensee is not required to store the alcohol beverages purchased for a special event separately from the licensee inventory. This is just cleaning up a lot of red tape that's been out there for a long time. Ask for an aye vote.
The motion is that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 133. Are there any no votes? Senators Moreno, with 34 aye votes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, and 0 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will move for the repassage of Senate Bill 133.
The motion is for the repassage of Senate Bill 133. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 133 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request my name be removed as a co-sponsor to Senate Bill 133.
Senator Moreno his name will be removed as a co-sponsor on Senate Bill 133. Co-sponsors. Senator Zenzinger. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Will the clerk please read? Correction, consideration of House adherence. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1115 lay over until tomorrow, April 23rd.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. And House Bill 1115 will lay over until 4/23/21 and retain its place on the calendar. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all of the appointments listed on the consent calendar?
Members of the Colorado Commission on the Aging, effective July 1st, 2020, for terms expiring July 1st, 2024. Lauren O'Connell, Littleton, Colorado, serving as an unaffiliated from the 6th Congressional District, appointed. Margaret Nugent, of Colorado Springs, Colorado, serving as an unaffiliated from the 5th Congressional District, appointed. Miles Crane of Fort Collins, Colorado, serving as an unaffiliated from the 2nd Congressional District, appointed. Jane Barnes of Lakewood, Colorado, serving as a Republican from the 7th Congressional District, reappointed. James DeVries of Denver, Colorado, serving as an unaffiliated from the 1st Congressional District, reappointed. Deborah Herrera of Ignacio, Colorado, serving as a Democrat from the 3rd Congressional District, reappointed. Connie Ring of Springfield, Colorado, serving as an unaffiliated from the 4th Congressional District, reappointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of all the appointments listed on the consent calendar, which includes members of the Colorado Commission on the Aging.
Is there any discussion? The motion is a confirmation of all the appointments listed on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excuse, those appointments are confirmed. Message from the governor.
Thursday, March 25th, honorable members of the Colorado Senate, pursuant to authority vested in the office of the governor of the state of Colorado, have the honor to inform you that I have approved and filed with the Secretary of State the following acts. Senate Bill 68 concerning the enactment of Colorado Revised Statutes 2020 as a positive and statutory law of the state of Colorado, approved on Thursday, March 25th, 2021 at 3:40 p.m. Senate Bill 90, Small Group Health Insurance Plan Renewal, approved on Thursday, March 25th, 2021 at 3:40 p.m.
Delivery to the governor.
April 22nd to the governor for signature on Thursday, April 22nd, 2021 at 9:05 a.m. Senate Bill 79, 207, 209, 216, 219, and 220.
Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, Presidente. Colleagues, members of the state's Veterans and Military Affairs Committee will be meeting in 15 minutes upon adjournment at the Old Supreme Court. We will be considering Senate Bill 199, House Bill 1051, and House Bill 1011. See y'all there promptly.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just a reminder, tonight is the Colorado chapter of the National Hemophilia Foundation virtual advocacy event. It's going to be on Zoom, and you should have another postcard in your mailbox. It starts at 6 p.m., and many of your constituents will be on that Zoom. So I ask if you would take some time and meet those folks. Thanks.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to announce that the Joint Committee Statutory Revision Committee will be meeting tomorrow, April 23rd, 1:30, Old State Library, and we have 5 items under consideration.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Judiciary Committee will be meeting at 1:30 this afternoon to consider House Bills 1143 and 1090 and Senate Bill 193. See you then.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Education Committee will be meeting today at 1:30. We will be hearing confirmations for members of the Charter School Institute Board, members of the Colorado Educational and Cultural Facilities Authority Board of Directors, member of the Board of Trustees for Western State Colorado University, member of the Board of Trustees for the Western State Colorado University again, and members of the Board of Governors of the Colorado State University System. In addition to that, we will be hearing 3 bills, Senate Bill 236, House Bill 1103, and House Bill 1055.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members of Senate Appropriations, it is time to get back to work after a brief hiatus for the long bill. We will be meeting tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We'll have about 20 bills under consideration. They are listed on your calendar on page 6. And just as a forewarning for everybody, we're going to be planning to meet every Friday from now till, whenever we wrap up, and try to tackle 20 to 25 bills per session. So a lot of work ahead, and appreciate everyone's attention tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., LSBB.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to announce that the Children's Caucus is going to be having our last meeting of the 2021 session today. It's virtual at noon, so in an hour. Topic today is discussing ending youth homelessness. And again, you should have the Zoom link in your email. If you don't, you can come over and chat with me or text me, and I will send it over to you. Thanks, colleagues.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request to be excused Monday, April 26th, to attend a memorial service. I've spoken with the majority leader, who once again is very distressed at my absence, and the minority leader, who said it was fine. Thank you.
The good senator from El Paso County will be marked excused for Monday, the 26th. Further announcements? Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. We want to announce Aerospace Caucus meeting today at noon.
Virtually.
That's right, virtually. It's all virtual these days. So join us to have a great conversation about one of Colorado's top industries.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have, I think, at least a few House bills to read across. Mr. President, I move that the Senate recess until 12 noon today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will stand in recess until 1200 hours today.